It's hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field. Or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Main Line. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. 2 more games left in the 2024 season for Oklahoma. We're not going to a bowl game. We're not even going to discuss that possibility. But, yeah, we are winding down here. Tyler and I don't think either of us have done very much prep for this like we normally do, because why are we going to talk about the game with Alabama? It's all about the future for Oklahoma. Who's going to be quarterback next year? Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? So we'll kind of focus in on that as far as how we talk about and look at this Alabama game and everything that's going on for Oklahoma Sooners. Tyler, welcome in. We're recording a little bit different than we normally do. Normally we're live on Tuesday nights. Had a little travel situation on my end that caused us to record this Monday night. So hopefully everything's still relevant for everyone. But Tyler, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Adam. Typically there's an itinerary, there's a script when we go live with these things on Tuesday nights, but obviously we're here to accommodate. This is at least one side of the podcast that is going to do anything and everything that it takes to accommodate his co-host. So here we are on a Monday night, special occasion, and there has been next to no prep work that has been done for this week's episode. But you know what? It's OU Alabama. When we get to my score prediction here a little bit towards the end of this episode, you're going to understand why I did not choose to put a whole lot of time and effort into this episode in terms of breaking down the matchup between the Sooners and the Crimson Tide. Because honestly, Adam, to be quite frank with you, ever since Oklahoma lost the game to Missouri, I'm already looking ahead to 2025. I'm thinking about offensive coordinator hire. I'm thinking about which coaches are going to be retained for next year, which players are going to be portaling out. Can Oklahoma hold on to this 2025 recruiting class? I just simply do not care that much about the last couple of games of this season, even though I am excited. I'm going to be making the trip down to Baton Rouge here in a couple of weeks. I'm excited that gets across that off the bucket list, Death Valley at night. But yeah, it's just, it's not good right now. It's really bad across the board in the state of Oklahoma from a football standpoint. The Thunder's not doing much better with the injury news with Chet Holmgren, but yeah, we're making it. So how are you? Is it nice to get out of the state, get away from the stench that is the Oklahoma football program in Norman? Because you had to go a long, long ways to kind of get away from that.
Yeah, I'm for the listeners. I'm in North Carolina visiting some family right now, and it's interesting just going through the airports and seeing. I think I mentioned this last week. All the other schools, teams out there, the schools that don't have football teams. It's like, yeah, they have a better program than us. And last week we were a little bit off script, not a lot of prep there, off the cuff, and things got interesting for me. So we'll see if maybe that happens again as we talk about the future of the Oklahoma Sooners. And I think when we look at this Alabama game. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to say, here's how Oklahoma wins the game. We'll talk about the spread here maybe a little bit later in the show and how it's a lot closer than I would put it. But maybe Vegas knows something a little bit there, because I think they're 5-5. Oklahoma is against the spread this year. So Vegas has this team pegged decently. But I guess the place to start with this game against Bama is like the quarterback position, because the last game we saw, Jackson Arnold was out there. I guess he functions the offense a little bit, which is not a very high praiseworthy thing, because we've seen Michael Hawkins, who as a true freshman usually is very up and down. The downs are probably, I guess, lower than Jackson Arnold's. The highs are definitely better than Arnold, but it's the middle in between where it's like there's a lot of nothing there. And Arnold has proven to be really unreliable week to week. We've seen some really good moments. We thought he was back after he came back to start, and really just was ineffective against Missouri. And I think a lot of that is the offensive coordinator situation still. I think a lot of it is, he's a spooked horse at this point with that offensive line. And a lot of people are saying, hey, you just can't put him out there at this point. You have to play for the future with Michael Hawkins. Tyler, is that where you see this thing heading?
I really don't think it matters, Adam. And I know that coming out of the Missouri game, we, kind of truly thought, okay, what does Oklahoma choose to do at the quarterback position for the last 2 weeks of the season? Obviously, there's still an opportunity for this team to become bowl eligible. The LSU game looks a little bit more manageable, I think, right now than many people thought a couple of weeks ago.
But that's totally based on LSU. That's not based on anything Oklahoma's done.
Absolutely. And really, Oklahoma has not shown that they have been able to do enough consistently on the offensive side of the football that would give LSU fits and really put LSU in a position where, they could possibly, lose a game to Oklahoma. So again, we've been talking about it back and forth for the last, 5 or 6 days. Does Oklahoma, go back to Jackson Arnold? Do they choose to, reinsert Michael Hawkins into the picture here? And I think that we kind of got our answer here about 45 minutes ago. Obviously, Jackson Arnold plays the worst game by a quarterback of the 2024 season, and he's a captain this week against Alabama. So lo and behold, unless this is just Brent Venables and the offensive coaching staff simply playing mind games, it kind of feels like Jackson Arnold is going to be QB1 when he trots out there to take on the Crimson Tide on Saturday. And again, I think that simply has more to do with them basically showing confidence in Jackson and trying to make their case, hey, you're our guy. You're who we want. You need to come back here next season. We want you as a part of this program in 2025. But yeah, I don't really think that this has anything. It's not performance based. I would say the reason why Jackson Arnold is getting this start over Michael Hawkins. I know that everybody kind of has a sour taste in their mouth from what they've seen. The last time that Michael Hawkins was out there against South Carolina, the first few minutes of that game. But up to that point, Michael Hawkins had done some good things. He put some good things on tape. Obviously, the more that Oklahoma has played football this year and the further and deeper that we've gotten into this season, I think that we can pretty much just kind of chalk this thing up as it really doesn't matter what quarterback is playing football for Oklahoma right now. The offensive line is that bad. The wide receivers are, so injury depleted. It doesn't matter who's out there catching passes. The running back rotation is in shambles. The tight end position is an absolute shit show, which is something that, we've kind of grown accustomed to saying in Norman, Oklahoma for the last couple of years. But again, I guess we're going to go with Jackson Arnold. We're going to see how this thing goes. You would hope that Joe John Finley and this coaching staff coming off of a bye week, maybe they can put a couple of new wrinkles in that might be able to get you 7 or 10 points. But again, you look at what Alabama does defensively, some of the playmakers, the front seven is going to be absolutely lights out. They've got a couple of All-American candidates on the back end of that defense. I don't know how Oklahoma scores, to be honest with you, Adam.
Yeah. A lot of people will probably be upset that Jackson Arnold is starting. I don't necessarily know that means he's going to be playing the entire game. I'm sure they'll be very open-minded on who they put out there, but it's like you mentioned, it really doesn't matter who's playing out there. The offense is a total mess. Everything around the quarterback is a disaster. So it really doesn't matter if it's Hawkins, if it's Arnold. Here's the interesting aspect of that. And when we look ahead to the 2025 season, we're all looking at the portal right now. No one's relying on Arnold or Hawkins to be the starter next year under whatever the new offensive coordinator is. We don't know that either of those guys will even want to be back at this point. They may want to transfer out. With Hawkins, it's interesting because he is the younger of the two. Do you put him out there and he really struggles? I guess that maybe then as Oklahoma and staff and coaches know, okay, he's not the guy. We really do need to get a portal guy. We can't rely on Hawkins to be in a battle for that quarterback position next year. Maybe that's the conclusion. Maybe he goes out and balls out, and maybe that scares off some potential portal candidates, saying, hey, do I really go to Oklahoma when Michael Hawkins might be the guy? And maybe that, gives us even lesser options in the portal. And I don't think you want that either. It's just an absolute awful situation that Oklahoma is in terms of quarterback situation. So, there's really no winning situation there, whether you play Hawkins, whether you play Arnold. Some people even just want to see Casey Thompson just to see something different, I guess. I think he's going to be a statue out there behind that offensive line if he were to, take some snaps. So it's absolute disaster. It really doesn't matter who you play at this point. At this point, it's kind of like, well, who wants to be a sacrificial lamb? And maybe
and Casey Thompson doesn't factor into your plans going into 2025. He's not going to be part of this, so there's really no need to throw him out there. As far as the case for Michael Hawkins, do I think that he would be able to possibly do some stuff against Alabama that Jackson Arnold could? Maybe not necessarily from the pocket with his arm, but I do think that as bad as Oklahoma's offensive line has been, particularly on the right side of this offensive line, now that they've lost a couple of, their key tackles that they thought, was going to be playing pivotal snaps for this football team going down the stretch. But, now that you've got, Spencer Brown and, kind of an underwhelming Fabechi in Weewoo, maybe it does kind of make sense to, if you do start Jackson Arnold, you simply split the snaps, give him a couple of series, then throw Michael Hawkins in there, kind of do a dual quarterback system for these last two games. If you go and you look at LSU, not to go too far forward here, but you look at some of their losses this season and, who has their defense struggled with? It's been against quarterbacks that have the ability to make plays with their legs. Most notably Marcel Reed at Texas A&M absolutely shredded the Tigers defense a few weeks ago. So maybe that is a situation where Michael Hawkins, with his ability to run the football, maybe he can do some things that Jackson Arnold simply can't. But again, I think that you will see Jackson Arnold start this weekend, and you will see both quarterbacks, I would hope. But again, I just simply Oklahoma could play the game of their life, and Alabama would have to turn the football over, 4 or 5 times and really shoot themselves in the foot for, I think, Oklahoma to have a chance in this one. So I know that it is common. You've got to fill content, you've got to fill some space. There's going to be a lot of, media guys out there. There's going to be a lot of other Oklahoma podcasts that are going to be coming on here, talking about, Oklahoma has to do A, B, C, D to have a chance to win on Saturday. And yeah, I mean, sure, we could sit here and talk about that if we really wanted to. If I thought that Oklahoma realistically had a chance to win this game on Saturday, we would. But, Alabama's in a position right now where, when they're playing their best, when Jalen Milroe is playing to his full potential, I think Alabama's the best team in the country right now. With what they're able to do on both sides of the football, Kalen DeBoer, leading the way at the head coaching position, calling the plays. I love Alabama, and I think that this is simply going to be a situation where they have still everything in front of them to play for, whether it's a berth in Atlanta for the SEC championship, college football playoff, being a top 4 seed, everything that Alabama fans, have clamored for, or what the expectation is down there in Tuscaloosa. They still have everything in front of them, and Oklahoma's just simply, get us to the finish line, get us to the offseason.
Yeah, I think really the only case you can make for Oklahoma to, have a fighting chance in the fourth quarter in this game is that, well, Alabama has struggled at times this year. Now, they've put together their probably 3 most complete games here lately between Missouri, Mercer, LSU, and maybe they're due for a little bit of a stinker. They are going on the road to an Oklahoma team that still has a really good defense. Maybe this is the opportunity, because this Alabama team, they're not as good as they have been previously, but they're still very, very good. They still should toss Oklahoma around, do pretty much whatever they want with them. But you do kind of wonder, is Alabama already anointed into the playoffs, and they just need to get past these terrible Oklahoma and Auburn teams? Maybe Alabama is looking ahead to Auburn. I don't know. That's the only scenario that it really comes into play, and Oklahoma really, has all the bounces go their way. And we've had a lot of bounces go against us this year, so I'm sure we're due. But, when you have so many bounces go against you, that's the sign of a team that's really bad. We talk about the fumbles pretty much at every game, and you go, well, that's not Brent Venables' fault. He is not out there holding on to the ball. Bad teams make bad plays constantly. So, and Oklahoma's a bad team. So let's talk about the running back position, though. Xavier Robinson, one of the bright spots from that Missouri game. I think Oklahoma really went to him way too late in that game, and it was too little too late at that point. But he was a bright spot. He's looks like a dude that, hey, if you're not going to have the most elite offensive line in front of you, at least he's going to bowl guys over. He's going to run through tackles. He's going to absolutely be no fun for that defensive side of the ball to tackle. And it looks like Javonte Barnes might be questionable at this point. I think it's probably the best way to put it. We'll see if he actually does indeed suit up against Alabama. He's had an extra week off, but he's been a guy that has taken a lot of hits throughout the year. So Xavier Robinson is fresh. Taylor Tatum plays about 6 plays, gets hurt almost every game, it seems like. So you kind of look at that and go, okay, surely the Red Sea is parting for Xavier Robinson to have a healthy share of carries this game against Alabama. But there was talks before the Missouri game that he was going to be a redshirt candidate. He's now at 4 games. Very mismanaged earlier in the year, where he was getting 1-2 plays in a game for no real reason.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And that happened 2 years ago with Gavin Sawchuk and Brent Venables' first year. It didn't come back to bite them, but he was going out on the field on a kneel down at the end of games, burning a game of eligibility there. And that was incredibly stupid. And it seems like that has not been fixed still in year 3 of Brent Venables' tenure. But there's no way that you can redshirt this guy, right?
You wouldn't think so. And I can see both sides of the card. If I'm Xavier Robinson, sure, is it worth you? You weren't really able to get on the field for any meaningful time whatsoever until Oklahoma played Missouri. And now, because Javonte Barnes is hurt, because, Gavin Sawchuk has been a no-show. Taylor Tatum can't stay healthy. Caleb Hicks is on a milk carton. We don't know where he's at. We don't know why he's playing. I can totally understand why, Xavier Robinson might, want to sit there and say, hey, you really didn't believe in me. You didn't give me an opportunity, through the first part of this season. Why would I burn a year of eligibility to go out there and play football? But on the flip side, and this is where I think that Xavier Robinson is going to be, this is going to be closer to what his, thought process is. He's going to look at this as an opportunity where, hey, I can be the bell cow for this football team and this offense for the last 2 games of the season. This is my opportunity. They call these money games, going up against LSU and going up against Alabama, where Xavier Robinson can really showcase not just to, his football team, his coaches, or even his fan base, but this is an opportunity for, them to have, 2 more primetime games where you're going to have the eyes of the nation on Oklahoma football again over these next couple of weeks. And this is an opportunity for Xavier Robinson to go out there and show that, he's going to be, a force to be reckoned with in the SEC for years to come. So I don't expect him to redshirt, but again, I think that if Javonte Barnes is not healthy, I don't see any reason why in this matchup on Saturday you don't try to give Xavier Robinson 15 plus carries. Split the rock. You're not going to be able to do anything in the passing game against this Alabama secondary with what Oklahoma is going to be throwing out there at the wide receiver position. Bauer Sharp is, Alabama's defensive linemen are as fast or are as athletic as Bauer Sharp is. So I don't want to just simply see this, repetition thing time and time again, where our offensive identity and our game plan going into a matchup is just simply, okay, let's force feed the ball to number 10. I don't think that that's a good recipe for success. I think that, Saturday, I don't think that you're going to be able to consistently run the ball against Alabama. But if there's anything that this offensive line is improved on, and something that they built upon the last couple of weeks, has been the ability to run the football. So, get out there and give these guys 15 to 20 plus carries on Saturday and see what you can do. But no, I don't redshirt him. Give him the ball, let him go out there and make some plays, see what this kid can do.
It's a very different equation than the Eddie Pierre-Louis conversation about redshirting, because he's a guard. That's a position that typically guys do redshirt anywhere along the offensive line. And then a guard, you're probably not going pro early, except unless you're one of the most elite guards in the entire country. So most likely you're looking at the Eddie Pierre-Louis thing and saying, hey, do we trade 2 games this year for 12 games in 2028? I don't think you do that with a running back. Totally different situation here. You're probably not even going to make it to 2027 with Xavier Robinson if he is indeed a dude. Those guys are going to come in, whether he plays these final 2 games or not. He's has a chance to rush for 1,000 yards in 2025, 2026. He's off to the NFL. Running backs don't stick around in college, so you might as well play them while you have them if they are capable of playing and capable of producing and giving your team a better chance to win the ball game. And I feel like that's exactly the case here with Xavier Robinson. Let's talk a little bit briefly about the defensive matchup for Oklahoma versus Alabama. Jalen Milroe, obviously an absolute stud, a dude. Not too many names in the running back room next to him that are going to, be, a big name type Alabama running back like we're normally used to. That's partly because Jalen Milroe is going to carry a lot of that load, and he's their leading rusher. He's really great. He's basically running back at that quarterback position. Ryan Williams, we all know that name there. But Oklahoma's defense has done really well. 26 points against Ole Miss. I think that was a really solid outing in retrospect as we look back on that particular game.
Is that the highest point value? Is that the highest point value for Oklahoma in an SEC game this year? Taking away the defensive touchdowns?
Might be. Texas put up 34 on us. I don't think that there was a defensive touchdown there. So Ole Miss would be second. But I think Ole Miss maybe is one of your more impressive outings, just now that we have most of the season to look back on. Ole Miss putting up points against nearly everybody, and Oklahoma goes to Oxford, holds them to 26. I think that's pretty darn impressive there. So, and I think that's kind of the reason this spread is only 13.5, in favor of Alabama. It's a big spread as far as Oklahoma knows, but that seems unexpectedly close as far as what Vegas does. And I think that's mainly because they know this Oklahoma defense will probably do a solid job against Alabama. It's not going to be enough. They're going to wear down, in my opinion. I think both of us have a score prediction that has Alabama covering that, but I think the defense is at least going to give Oklahoma some type of fighter's chance if the offense doesn't completely fumble the ball away in the first quarter.
And I think that Oklahoma, with how well the front seven has played in stopping the run consistently all season long, I think that that's what gives them a puncher's chance of being able to slow down this Alabama offense for 4 quarters. Obviously, Jalen Milroe is going to get his. I mean, he's the best athlete on the field anytime that he, suits up for the Crimson Tide. But I think that this is going to be a game where if Kalen DeBoer decides like, okay, hey, I want to slow this game down. Let's go out there. Let's run the football with Jalen Milroe, with Jamari Miller, who could be at Oklahoma, by the way. Our running back coach didn't think he was fast enough, but sure does look good in an Alabama uniform. We'll never shy away from an opportunity to mention that. But I do think that this is going to be an opportunity where when you look at Oklahoma and the lack of production that we've gotten at the cornerback position, that's kind of been, Adam, if I could pinpoint one thing on the defensive side of the football that has been kind of a disappointment for me this year. I know that there was a lot of hype coming into the season, obviously, about, Des Malone, Kenai Walker. These are two prototypical SEC caliber corners that Oklahoma has at their disposal, and they just simply haven't been good, haven't been consistent all season long. And this would be the premier game where you would like to have Ginger Williams back in, at 100% fully healthy to cover a guy like Ryan Williams, because as good as Eli Bowen has been, and he's been one of the bright spots, in terms of, the true freshman playing this year, him and Jaden Jackson. This is just going to be simply a scenario where if Kalen DeBoer decides that, okay, we're going to air this thing out, we know that we can hold up in pass protection against Oklahoma and give Jalen Milroe the opportunity to throw the football down the field. I think that Alabama is going to have an opportunity to make some big plays against what's been a pretty lackluster secondary for Oklahoma in terms of, holding up in pass coverage. But I just don't see a path to victory for Oklahoma. I think that Oklahoma's defense, they're going to get theirs. They're going to make their fair share of plays. There's too good. There's too much pride on the line. You got guys like Danny and Billy and Ethan Downs. This is a money game for them. This is simply when NFL draft people, franchises are turning on the tape to, study these guys. They're going to look and see, what did Stutzman, what did Bowman, what did Downs and some of these seniors that Oklahoma's going to have in the NFL draft, what did they do against these Alabamas and LSUs of the world? So I think that the defense is going to show up on Saturday. I just simply think that it's going to be a matchup that's not going to be very favorable for Oklahoma in all four quarters, just because of the different ways and the different threats that Jalen Milroe presents as a quarterback.
Jalen Milroe's done a really good job taking care of the football this year. Only 6 interceptions on the season. I do think if you could pick your poison and say, hey, do we want you to run on us or throw on us? I think you do say, yeah, throw on us and see what you can do. And probably a 75% chance that, huge boom, great game if you were to take that, and a 25% chance that Oklahoma gets, multiple turnovers at that point. But you take those odds really at that point.
Yeah, I don't want to, walk out of that game on Saturday night looking at the box score, seeing that Jalen Milroe ran for 160 plus yards. If you're going to go down swinging, stop the run, force them to beat you in the passing game. If they do that, then Alabama's just simply better than you, and they've got the horses to be able to do it. So it is kind of a pick your poison game. But again, until Oklahoma fixes the deficiency that is the cornerback position, then you're going to continue to run into spots like this.
We've seen so many teams play Oklahoma from an offensive standpoint of, we'll just play safe, play very conservative, and wait for your offense to just give us the ball on the ground or through the air or whatever, be stagnant. Yeah. Really just wait for Oklahoma to make mistakes. And that's proven to be a very successful offensive strategy for opposing teams. We also saw Alabama against LSU 2 weeks ago. Once it got to 3-4 minutes left in the third quarter, Alabama did not throw a pass after that point in the game. And I do wonder if Kalen DeBoer kind of recognizes that and says, hey, I'll do some safe passes early on just to establish rhythm, maintain that rhythm going in through the rest of the season. But really, we're just here to run the clock and run the ball a ton, wait for Oklahoma to give us the ball inside the red zone like they typically do, or, pick six or whatever it is that they do. And we'll pack up our bags and go home winning this game by 20 plus points. And I just kind of feel like that's what we're bound for. Maybe at some point our offense will take care of the ball and not put our defense in those positions constantly. But I mean, I've been waiting all year for that.
Adam, what are your expectations? Obviously, you're going to be in attendance for this one. What are your expectations for the crowd on Saturday night?
I think it'll be a good crowd. I don't think it'll be like the typical games of this magnitude as far as helmet logos, though. Against Tennessee, I was standing almost sideways in my row because it was so packed in there. Every ticket was being scanned. You could feel the buzz going in the stadium. I don't think we'll get that. I think it will look full. I think most fans will go to that game, but I think Oklahoma fans will be loud on defense, but I think we all know what's going on here, and it sucks. I mean, I've never been in a position where I expect to go into the stadium there and know full well that Oklahoma is going to lose the game, and it's gross. It's disgusting. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, I would be happy if we kept it within 10 points. Absolutely not. I know that like there's no chance Oklahoma wins this game. My standard is still win the game. It's Oklahoma. Like,
and I think that's arguably one of the biggest indictments on this coaching staff.
it's awful. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and not to get like into the whole Brent Venables thing, but you look back, 2 out of the last 3 years, he's absolutely failed as a head coach. And you can say, oh, well, he had injuries this year. Oh, he made the wrong hire offensive coordinator. Oh, 2022, it was all about Lincoln. Other coaches figure it out. Other coaches find a way to work around, other things that happen, whether they be because of their decisions or because of a previous coach or whatever. Other coaches find a way to get better results. So one way that Brent is going to have to find better results is through a new offensive coordinator, and kind of the buzzy candidate, really 2 of them. We'll talk Dan Mullen mainly here, but Ben Arbuckle out of Washington State, the 2 guys that are receiving the most buzz right now. But Dan Mullen is one that really you're either totally in or totally out on him. And he's a guy that has been away from coaching for a few years, has been in the booth at ESPN, has been at these coaching clinics. So he's not fully stepped away from the game of college football, but kind of a lightning rod candidate. Where do you fall on him, Tyler?
There's definitely a lot of pros and cons. I mean, obviously, I think that the 2 biggest names, Adam, you hit the nail on the head. The 2 guys that are getting the most buzz right now surrounding this offensive coordinator hire is Dan Mullen, the former head coach at Florida, former head coach at Mississippi State, who has a very, very impressive track record with what he's been able to do working with quarterbacks and leading coaching offenses that have been highly productive, very efficient, scoring a ton of points because he's got some pretty good feathers in his cap. I mean, obviously, we all know about his time coaching Tim Tebow, Dak Prescott, Nick Fitzgerald, what he was able to do at Florida with Kyle Trask, what was no short of a miracle. He's kind of a whisperer when it comes to quarterbacks and offensive football. And again, there's a lot of pros to it. Obviously, he's got head coaching experience. He's a guy that Brent Venables would simply be able to, entrust him, kind of like you did with Jeff Lebby. And, obviously, Brent's background, his bread and butter is defense. He obviously needs to continue to, develop and become more well-rounded as a football coach. But I think that Dan Mullen is a guy that Brent can, kind of hand him the reins to this thing and say, hey, I'm going to be monitoring this from a distance, but I fully trust you. You've got the track record. You've got the experience. You go run this offense and figure out a way to play complementary football to go along with this defense that Zach Allen and I are fixing. And you combine that with his ties to the SEC, both from a coaching standpoint, recruiting. He knows the area. He knows what an elite offensive roster looks like on offense in the SEC. So he's going to help you with that in terms of your transfer portal evaluations, possibly, bringing in some high school recruits. But on the flip side, Adam, I don't expect Dan Mullen, if he does come to Oklahoma, I don't expect this to be anything more than a 1-year rental, because there's going to be a short list of programs out there, upper tier programs, that if he comes into Oklahoma and say Oklahoma, goes out there and averages, 28 to 30 points a game in the SEC, and Oklahoma, rattles off an 8-4, 9-3, there's going to be a long list of programs that are going to come to the table wanting to pull Dan Mullen to come be the head football coach at their respective school. That's why I like Ben Arbuckle in this situation a little bit more. But before we talk about him, Adam, where are you at with Dan Mullen? Are you as excited as everybody else is about the opportunity of bringing Dan to Oklahoma?
I like it a lot, and I'll make the case here. I know a lot of people will look at him and go, he's been out of the game for a while. Like, let's not go to a retread or something like that. Go back the last 10 years that Dan Mullen's been a head coach, actually, and he's been very involved in the offenses, both at Florida and in Mississippi State, calling plays throughout that tenure. Averaged over 30 points in every one of those last 10 years, except for 2012 and 2013 at Mississippi State, where he averaged 29.5 and 27.7. That's incredibly consistent for an offense to just be so reliable that, hey, we can get 30 points a game out of that. I know there was some responses because we put that out on Twitter. Some people said, hey, if that was the case at Oklahoma this year, we'd be 7-3 right now, and maybe even better potentially, because you just never know how some games work out. But incredibly consistent. He's done that with a wide range of quarterbacks. Kyle Trask is a guy that's been in the NFL as a backup. Dak Prescott is a starter for the Dallas Cowboys. I know he's, had his ups and downs, but he's still a starter in the NFL. He's had guys that really are like nobodies. Everyone has forgotten about Nick Fitzgerald at Mississippi State. Guy rushed for over 1,000 yards consistently for Dan Mullen's offense. So the guy knows offense. He's coming back to the game not as someone that, retired, went off to the beach, has been in Cabo for the last decade, is coming back and he's blowing dust off his old playbook and running out the wing tee or anything like that. The guy took 3 years off from coaching. He's still very much involved in the game, from being in the booth for ESPN, being at coaches' clinics, there's the picture that's going around of him and Barry Switzer and Brent Venables up in the East Club from earlier in the year. So the guy is he's not outdated or anything like that. The other aspect that you look at here is he's a very, very big name. And so there's going to be a lot of positive media attention directed his way if he comes to Oklahoma. I think there's a better chance that some of the offensive players that we do want to keep around and not let them go to the portal, they say, hey, that's a big name. That's somebody that I know is successful, that has developed NFL players. I want to stick around for that. Other guys that are going to enter the portal, when they're saying, hey, where do I want to go? They're going to know Dan Mullen's name. That is a widely well-known name. So you get some really good positives there. And, yes, he's probably a 1-year rental, maybe 2 years at best, but that is an incredibly good thing. If he is good enough to go get a head coaching job after 1 year in Norman, yes, you'd love the continuity at Oklahoma over multiple years. That's one reason that we got in trouble, though, with Seth Luttrell, was that we wanted the continuity. Didn't do much for us. But if he's rattling off 28, 29, 30 points a game and gets a head coaching job somewhere, we're in really good shape and as far as how the 2025 record plays out.
And again, if that's something that Dan Mullen is seriously considering doing, coming to Oklahoma to be the offensive coordinator, obviously, he's got previous experience as a head coach. He, his aspirations, if he was to get back in the coaching game, he would probably prefer to be the head ball coach. But I think that this is an interesting situation, and it's really a question that Brent Venables and this administration is really going to kind of have to, do some serious thinking on and go back and forth. Do you choose to go the route of bringing in a Dan Mullen to where, if you strike lightning in a bottle, he comes in, kills it, reinvigorates this offense, breathes some life back into that side of the football at Oklahoma that's been missing for, the better part of the last 12 months. Or knowing that would essentially be out the door and you would be starting over again. Do you choose to go that route, or do you go with a younger up-and-coming guy like a Ben Arbuckle that you could be able to throw a 3 to 4 year deal at to be able to come in and, him possibly bring his quarterback and John Mateer with him from Washington State to Oklahoma? You would like to think that Oklahoma has to be very aggressive in the transfer portal, going out there and getting another signal caller to be able to come in and if not be the guy from day one, he can at least come in and, be in a quarterback competition with whoever's left on campus here. So again, I probably tend to side a little bit more with going the Ben Arbuckle route. I like what he's doing out there in Pullman right now. I know it's not, the top tier competition like we're facing the SEC, but at the end of the day, what he likes to do schematically and the style of offense that he runs, I think that translates. And as long as you've got the guys in place to run your offense, I think that you can be very productive no matter what defense you're facing. And obviously, they're averaging 41 points a game right now, over 460 total yards of offense a game, 280 through the air, 180 plus on the ground. So that's a good mixture of run-pass ratio there. And, we've talked about the quarterback play. If he could bring John Mateer with him, I think that's a no-brainer. I think that you absolutely go that route if you want to. Ben Arbuckle can come in. He's 29. He's young. He's hungry. Very similar to Lincoln Riley, where he's looking to come in and make a name for himself, prove that he has what it takes to coach, at the top-tier level of college football. I think that it's good for Oklahoma no matter which route you go. But if I had a preference, I think I would go with Ben Arbuckle right now.
I like John Mateer a lot. If Oklahoma got him, I'd be thrilled. I also realized that if Dan Mullen comes to Oklahoma, he didn't have ties to any quarterback necessarily, so he's not limited to just John Mateer. He could go out and get
somebody
guy.
Good.
Yeah, he could go out and get the surprise guy that enters the portal. Not that this guy is rumored at all, but let's say someone like Avery Johnson is like, you know what, I'm not feeling it in Manhattan anymore. I want to go somewhere where they're going to run me a lot more. I know Dan Mullen can do that. That's something that could materialize if you have that guy, versus if it's Ben Arbuckle, not as much cachet out there. Maybe it's John Mateer, and that's the only option they look at. There's some differences there. The other thing that is kind of concerning for me about Ben Arbuckle, I like what you mentioned there, 180 yards per game on the ground. That's a little bit different, though, than what we've seen out of his offenses in years past. Go back to last year. Washington State didn't have anyone close to 1,000-yard rusher, which is one thing that I usually look for is how well are they running the ball. In fact, as a team, they just barely crossed the 1,000-yard mark last year with 1,018 yards. The year before that, pretty much the same scenario with just 1,300 team rushing yards, not from one guy, just total team. So his offenses, and going back to Western Kentucky as well, have not been very effective running the ball. Now, on the flip side, dude basically puts together elite quarterbacks almost everywhere he is. Cam Ward, Bailey Zappi. He's had some other guys at Western Kentucky, and now John Mateer up in the Palouse there. So it's doing something right there. I wonder if that translates really well to the SEC when you're not going to run the ball well. Maybe you're not going to choose to run the ball a ton. I just wonder if that is going to be super effective. And if you do have Dan Mullen really at your disposal that you could go to, someone that is a little bit more proven and has a longer track record. And a lot of people say, yeah, he's looking for a head coaching job. I don't know if that head coaching job that he wants is going to be open this year. It's looking like a really limited, slow cycle on the carousel for head coaching jobs. So if you can go get him, you might as well.
I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I think the one thing that we can agree on, and everybody that's listening to this would agree on as well, I don't care if you throw for 350 or run for 350. If you're just going out there and scoring points and executing, I don't care how you get the job done, as long as you're going out there and you're putting points on the board. So again, depending on who you listen, a day or two away from being done. Others out there are saying that this is going to be something that doesn't get wrapped up until after the final game of the season when OU wraps up the regular season against LSU in Baton Rouge. But Adam, one quick thing here before we get to our best bet segment. I know that there's been a lot of talk out there right now regarding, okay, you're bringing Brent Venables back. You're not paying the $44.8 million buyout. Maybe we reallocate some of those funds to the NIL space, whether it's the transfer portal guys, whether it's the class of 2026. I probably tend to side a little bit more on being more spend heavy with the transfer portal class because, 2026 is going to be pretty tough for Brent Venables to be able to go out there and sell them on the future of, not just the University of Oklahoma, but sell them on the future of, hey, if we're being truthful here, there's probably a 50-50 chance that I'm not going to be your head football coach if you choose to play at Oklahoma. So that's going to be difficult for OU. But, Adam, do you think that there is some merit to the talk going on right now that the donor base at Oklahoma has just – they've reached a whole new level of pissed off to where they're sick and tired of the fact that, in less than 4 months' time, Oklahoma has gone from being – widely known as being a top 5-10 program in America to being the laughingstock of the Southeastern Conference and, outside of Florida State, really kind of the laughingstock of college football this year. Do you think there's some merit to the fact that the donors are willing to say, okay, screw it. Here's the checkbook, how much money you need. We're tired of this shit. Go out there, spend whatever you need, go plug those holes, make us competitive for 2025.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time buying that because if I was a big money donor and was contributing to the athletic department at that level, I'd almost be thinking, hey, I'm not going to give Brent Venables more new toys to play with. Maybe they view him differently. Maybe they're, because they're interacting him probably on a more personal basis than I am. But maybe they're saying, hey, I'm going to save my money. I'm going to wait for the buyout next year to help pay for that. And I know I'm going to have to help hit the portal hard for whoever the new head coach is in 2026 and help cover up some of the mistakes that the Venables era is producing. Maybe that's the viewpoint that they're having at this point. And that's kind of how I would view it if I was in that position. So I don't know that I'm necessarily buying like renewed interest and renewed, money coming in and things like that, just because everyone's so pissed off. Like if you really do feel that way, go get a new head coach now. Like why spend your money doing anything else?
Well, and I think it's kind of pathetic too that, okay, this is what it's going to take for you guys to want to shell out money. Like, we're the University of Oklahoma. Why have you not been wanting to do this since NIL and the transfer portal has been a thing? So why is it taking a 5-7 type season for you to simply want to do this? If the expectation, if the standard is the standard at Oklahoma where we're all about competing for championships and, being at the top of the mountain, why have we not been doing this for the past few years? So again, that's a conversation for another day. We'll see how the offensive coordinator hire plays out. We'll see if it's Dan Mullen or if it's somebody else that's going to be calling plays next year in Norman, Oklahoma. But Adam, best bets. It's our favorite time of the week for maybe not for me. Recently, the football that is being played by the Oklahoma Sooners is almost as bad as the best bet segment for the main line this year. This has been by far and away the worst time that I've had reading the board of trying to evaluate games. So, Adam, I'm coming off of an 0-5 week. You've closed the gap. There's only one game of separation here between the two of us. You had the impressive week. Who do you like here with pick number one?
Yeah, if nothing else, at least it's a tight competition. Going 0-5 is almost equally as impressive as going 5-0, at least as far as the odds of that happening. So at least we have an interesting race here, one game separating us with 3 weeks left of the season. My number one, I'm going Texas Tech -3.5 at Stillwater against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Oklahoma State and I guess Texas Tech as well, both coming off bye weeks. And I just think Oklahoma State doesn't have anything left in the tank here. So give me the Red Raiders.
I like it. Pick number one, going out to kind of the game of the week in college football. Indiana, the Fighting Kurt Cignetti's going up to the Shoe to take on Ohio State. Buckeyes, a 12.5-point favorite. I think that this is the week that the wheels kind of come off of Indiana a little bit. I know that that's kind of drastic to say the wheels come off of an undefeated football team, but you go and you look at Indiana's schedule, as impressive as what it's been, of what Kurt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan has done in year one up there in Bloomington. They haven't played next to anybody, and really the one game that they played a team that had just as good, if not better, competition, even though they're kind of inadequate right now as a football team this season, it was Michigan, and this was a one possession game. Michigan had their chances to win that game going into the fourth quarter. The fact that I know that they're coming off of a bye week, Ohio State's about to play their sixth game in a row. I think that Ohio State, they've had this one circled for a while now. They're kind of sick and tired of hearing all the buzz around the Hoosiers. I think that Ohio State wins this thing by 2 touchdowns. Give me the Buckeyes -12.5.
I like it. My number two, I'm going to UMass, the Minutemen traveling to Georgia. I'll take the Minutemen here, plus 24.5 in the first half. Georgia coming off a really great win over Tennessee. Got 12:45 Eastern time kickoff here. Bulldogs are usually a little bit slow in getting started in those games. And I just feel like, yeah, there might be a little bit of a hangover effect here. Now, the Minutemen just fired their coach, Don Brown. And Adam Brenneman, a lot of buzz on Twitter actually right now that he could be in the running for the head coach there at UMass. And if you're not familiar with how he's connected to the show, he's actually the one that asked us to be a part of college sports company, Red Dirt Media. So maybe he'll be a head coach by the end of, I guess, the next couple of weeks or so. We'll see what happens there. But give me the Minutemen to go into Athens and at least hold a little bit closer in that first half.
Going to the Big 12, out to the Sunflower State, Colorado, kind of one of the darlings of the college football season this year. Deion Sanders on his way to being a finalist for the College Football Coach of the Year. Buffs are a 2.5-point favorite going down to Lawrence to take on the Kansas Jayhawks. And Adam, this is just simply one to where Colorado has been so good against the spread over the last 5 to 6 weeks that I think I'm going to get on the train here with Colorado. I know that Kansas is done a really good job kind of derailing a couple of their opponents' seasons the last couple of weeks with Iowa State and, most recently winning on the road at BYU. That was one of my losses a week ago. But I'm going to go with Colorado in this instance. I think that they've simply got too many weapons out there on the perimeter. I think that they do just enough to win this game. It's we all know about the lackluster environment that is, Lawrence, Kansas for football Saturdays. But I think that Colorado does just enough. They go up there and they get a 3-point win. Give me the Buffs -2.5.
That feels like such an easy pick, and it felt like an easy pick a week ago when you picked BYU -2.5, and it felt like an easy pick a week before that.
That would have been my lock if we did lock of the week. That was it.
Yeah, so Kansas, I don't know if they can do it 3 weeks in a row and just destroy seasons, but we'll see. I'm going back to a team that performed well for me last week, James Madison Dukes, traveling on the road again, this time to Boone against App State. I've got the Dukes -7.5. I think App State's they're nowhere close to the program that we've seen, that we know them to be. Dukes, I think, can go in and win this game pretty handily.
Adam, when I saw that you had Texas Tech and Oklahoma State on your card here, that was such a good pick. I wanted to do just a little bit different variation. That way it doesn't look like I'm copying you. So going down to Stillwater, I'm going to go Texas Tech first half -2.5 against Oklahoma State. I think that the Red Raiders jump on them early, get out to a big lead in the first half. So give me the Red Raiders -2.5 out there at Boone Pickens Stadium.
One of the biggest rivalries on the show throughout our entire history is me versus the Troops. The Troops let me down last week. Navy couldn't get on the board and get me a W for the over. So I'm going against the Troops again, but this time Army gets my wrath. Traveling to Notre Dame and South Bend, the Fighting Irish are 14.5-point favorites. Army, the best team that they've played all year is Air Force, UAB, Rice.
One of the two.
I don't know.
This is a big step up on Saturday.
Yeah, and Navy absolutely got manhandled by Notre Dame earlier in the year. Similar teams, similar schemes. I'm riding with the Fighting Irish here to win this game big.
I like it. All right, pick number 4. What's has a chance to be one of the ugliest games for the viewing audience on Saturday. Wisconsin going up to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers. Huskers are minus 2.5-point favorite. They've been trying for the last month to become bowl eligible. They've been sitting on 5 wins for the better part of 3 weeks. I think that this is just simply going with the fact that the Nebraska's playing this game at home. Wisconsin is coming off of what was their Super Bowl, where they took Oregon all the way down to the wire at home. It was super deflating, the fact that they weren't able to come out on top with the victory there. I think that they go on the road to Nebraska. I think that Nebraska becomes bowl eligible. They win this football game by at least a field goal. Give me Nebraska minus 2.5.
Man, I hope you're right for Nebraska.
Naturally take Wisconsin money line.
Because I think, you've seen the stat out there that Nebraska is 0-9 in their last 9 games to reach bowl eligibility. So it's like, man, you couldn't ask for much of a better matchup here against a Wisconsin team that's not very good. My number 5 here, I'm going to the Pac-12, or I guess Pac-2 championship game is, I guess, what you could call it. Washington State traveling to Oregon State here. Maybe Oklahoma's future offensive coordinator on the sidelines there. I've got the Cougars to cover minus 13.5, an Oregon State team that got shut out a week ago against Air Force. I think the Cougars should roll handsomely.
I like it. Pick number 5, going to Norman, Oklahoma. Alabama minus 13.5. Crimson Tide, bet the mortgage, bet the house. Alabama blows Oklahoma out on Saturday night.
Feels too easy. So that brings us to our score predictions for the OU versus Bama game. Tyler, you obviously are very negative here on Oklahoma's chances. What do you actually think the score plays out to be?
I think barring a big-time performance from Oklahoma's defense that, features a pick 6 or, they create a turnover on the Oklahoma plus side of the football field to set Oklahoma's offense up with the short field, I think that that's the only path to success for Oklahoma's offense in terms of being able to put points on the board. Zach Schmidt is going to have to kick some field goals. I do not think, Adam, I've tried to be as positive as I possibly could. I think that there is still a sense of pride, particularly on the defensive side of the football for Oklahoma. Billy, Danny, Ethan Downs, Woody Washington. I hope that the crowd comes out there and they provide a really, really good, home atmosphere for senior day. These guys deserve it. Billy didn't have to come back this year. Danny Stutzman didn't have to come back this year. These are 2 of the best all-around guys, best all-around players that Oklahoma has had come through the program on the defensive side of the football in quite some time. I think that this is going to be a good atmosphere for about a quarter. But at the end of the day, Oklahoma's offense is fucking terrible, for lack of a better word. They're not going to be able to score. I think that this is a shutout. Give me Alabama 38, Oklahoma 0.
I can't argue with really anything that you put out there. I just have seen this team time and time again play so uncomplimentary in the way that they go out there. The strategies they have are mind-blowing. I don't know how you can top a jet sweep to a tight end. But I'm sure Joe John Finley will find a terrible way to use Bauer Sharp this Saturday.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't mean to interrupt you there. And for everybody out there that's going to be listening to this when this thing gets uploaded tomorrow, I'm not sitting here saying that, if the score is in fact 38-0 or the score that Adam's going to give in just a second, this is not us sitting here saying that, Oklahoma's defense, just got taken behind the woodshed and got blown out. I think that this is that this score result is going to be predicated upon the fact that Oklahoma is so bad offensively that they are time and time again going to put Oklahoma's defense in really bad situations, whether it's when it comes to field position and eventually the dam bursts. We saw it in Columbia, Missouri a couple of weeks ago, and Alabama is a hell of a lot better than Missouri. And I just think that this is going to be a situation where once the dam breaks, Alabama's going to put the foot on the throat. They're going to run this thing up. So yeah, Alabama. You at least have OU scoring, Adam. Am I reading this right?
I do, and I think it's just because it's so hard to shut out any opponent, no matter how bad their offense is. There's just any number of different things where Alabama drops a fumble on the 5-yard line. Maybe Oklahoma can put together a 5-yard drive. I'm just so low on this offense. I don't see where it comes from. Maybe Michael Hawkins comes in and runs around in the 4th quarter, gets a garbage time touchdown. Maybe that's how Oklahoma scores. This defense has proven that they're not really putting together the multiple turnover type games that they were early in the season. So I don't have a lot of faith in them, even if they are going to be stout in pretty much all other manners. So I've got Bama winning 34, Oklahoma 7. I just don't see this being a close game.
Follow up to that, Adam. We thought that rock bottom was the South Carolina game. Then rock bottom fell even lower, losing to Missouri the way that it did. If our score predictions come true, if this is an Alabama 5 touchdown win, 4 touchdown win, Oklahoma fails to reach double digits in points, Alabama blows this thing out. Are we as low as we could possibly get in terms of the fans' opinion in support of Brent Venables, or do you think that it could possibly get a hell of a lot worse if this thing kind of goes how we're picking it?
I don't think it is lower than where we were after Missouri and South Carolina, because regardless of South Carolina and Missouri both having good records this year, those are schools and programs that Oklahoma fans do not think are better than Oklahoma. Alabama, at least we can swallow that and say, hey, that's Nick Saban's program. Alabama historically has probably been better than Oklahoma throughout the years. They're going to the playoffs this year, most likely. At least you can swallow that, even if it is a really awful score on the scoreboard. You can't swallow those losses against Missouri and South Carolina. So that's kind of the difference there. Now, the real disappointment will be that, hey, Oklahoma probably goes out and rolls out the same effort, same type of strategy with no real changes, no real improvements on offense. And so that will be the real disappointment if we do indeed get one of those types of scores. So
I guess maybe a better way to phrase this question, and then I'll let you wrap this up. Can anything happen on Saturday night? We just had the endorsement a week ago from President Harris and Joe Castiglione. Can anything happen on Saturday night that would say, okay, we're cutting the cord right now, we're severing the ties to Brent Venables? We got this thing is a whole lot worse than just an offensive coordinator search. We're tearing this thing down to the foundation.
Man, I mean, I feel like if you get like a 52-0 type score, that's
you have to.
You probably have to. Like, you can't really come back from those types of things. And I don't think Brent Venables can come back from where he's at right now. But like this kind of situation it sounds like we're rolling with him. So let's just try to put together the most optimistic viewpoint, I guess, that we can of whatever new offensive coordinator is willing to be the sacrificial lamb in 2025. So what a negative way to end the show. But hopefully next week we'll be talking maybe at least some positives. Maybe Oklahoma keeps it within a score and we have something at least relatively exciting and interesting to talk about. Of maybe there is a glimmer of hope against LSU. I know most people don't want to talk about anything like that, but maybe there will be some type of glimmer of hope. So we'll see. We appreciate everyone making us a part of your weekly routine, whether you're listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube. And we will see everyone next week for the next episode of The Main Line.